Good morning, everybody. Today we have a special session. We are pleased to have the professors from the University of Newcastle, and we are going to learn about how are they delivering with healthy communities in Newcastle. And I think it is a very great opportunity for us to understand what they are doing and what we should do in our neighborhood of Lucena and in all the Spanish neighborhoods. So I think it will be very interesting for all of us. I hope that you will participate in this session, asking questions and feedback with the professors in order to have all the expertise and to make all the information they could be able to give to. So I think it will be a very interesting experience for all of us. So in first place it will be Dominik, which will talk about the Newcastle experience. So Dominik, you are welcome, and you can be over there, over here, or whatever.
I'll stay over here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Dominik Aitken. I'm a research associate in environmental gerontology within the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at Newcastle University. And I'm just going to provide a brief overview really about Newcastle University, our involvement in UNI-Health, and who's going to be speaking throughout today. So I just want to begin by saying how thrilled we all are to be here from Newcastle University. We're really excited to be here today and to be part of this project, and we really hope that working with UPM on this project is the first of many projects in which we can partner together. So I'm sure you've all already got some familiarity with what UNI-Health is as a project and what it's trying to achieve, focused on knowledge exchange around the theme of urban health, trying to bring together students and researchers, but also professionals and citizens as well, to explore that theme of urban health. And obviously at the two different sites at UPM and Newcastle University, there's two different focuses within that overarching focus on urban health. Age-friendly cities here at UPM, which we're contributing to today, and then the Newcastle programme, which will run on the first week of October later this year, will be around mostly green infrastructure and innovating with nature for health. And really what we're trying to do throughout the course of UNI-Health is to build capacity and develop networks around this theme. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of background about Newcastle University. Barbara will speak a little bit later on about the city of Newcastle upon Tyne, but just a little bit of background about the university. It traces its origin back to 1834, but formally became Newcastle University in 1963, having previously been part of Durham University, also in the northeast of England. The university now has 4 campuses. In addition to the campus in Newcastle, it also has campuses in London, Singapore and Malaysia. And across those 4 campuses now has over 28,000 students. According to the QS World University Rankings, the university is ranked within the top 150 universities in the world. And it's also a member of the Russell Group. The Russell Group in the UK is a collection of what is seen as the leading research and teaching institutions within the country. At the behest of the government, universities within the UK are expected to go through a research quality assessment periodically, something called the Research Excellence Framework, or REF. And within the theme of architecture, built environment and planning, the university was ranked within the top 12 in the UK. So thinking strategically within Newcastle, we've identified 5 key research strengths which really span across a variety of different schools and the 3 faculties. And they are ageing and health, data, culture and creative arts, cities and energy. And one of the reasons that we're so excited to be part of this project is that you can see that the work here within UNI-Health spans at least across 2 of those, ageing and health and cities. The There are a few innovative projects which are currently going on at Newcastle University that I wanted to share with you. One of them is the development of what's called the Campus for Ageing and Vitality, and this is taking place on a site just to the west of Newcastle City Centre, a site which used to house a hospital, but is now set to develop the world's premier centre for healthy ageing and living. That's the vision for the Campus for Ageing and Vitality. Currently, it houses the University's Institute for Ageing and a grouping of different ageing research laboratories. In the last couple of weeks, there have been expansion plans announced for the next 15 years, which is to develop the campus further, including more research facilities, more space for businesses, but also care and residential development as well, and the potential for a dementia care village. An artist's impression of how that might look there. So the Campus for Ageing and Vitality is one of the projects that's happening in Newcastle at the moment around this theme. The other project that I wanted to share with you is the development of the National Innovation Centre for Ageing, or NICA, and Graham will be telling you a little bit more about this. Set up in 2014, based on a £40 million investment both from the university and from UK central government. The aim of NICA is to really bring together research with industry and the health and care sectors, as well as the public, in order to innovate around the theme of ageing. And there are three sub-themes to the work that NICA does. One is the more medical side around healthy ageing, and the other two are perhaps more applicable to what we're going to be talking about today: age-friendly places and inclusive design of services and products. And soon, NICA will be relocating to an iconic new building on what's called Newcastle Helix. Newcastle Helix is, I think I'm right in saying, the largest UK city centre redevelopment project, which is going to house a variety of different commercial, residential and academic infrastructure. And they'll be moving to this building, which is currently under construction in Newcastle later this year. So I wanted to take you through briefly the four speakers that you'll be hearing from today. First of all, Thomas Scharf, who is Professor of Social Gerontology and is President-elect of the British Society of Gerontology, whose presidency will begin later this year for 2 years. And Tom has a wealth of experience around social gerontology. He's the lead on the theme Ageing, Economic and Social Impact within the Institute for Ageing. And alongside his academic work, he's also chair of the Age-Friendly Group for Newcastle, which Barbara will be telling you a little bit more about later on. He has a variety of different expertise, including in relation to ageing and social policy, environment, social inclusion and exclusion, but also critically around inequalities. So Tom couldn't be here today, but he's very kindly recorded a video of a lecture for us to share with you today, which is really setting out some of the high concept of age-friendly cities, where the concept arose from, and then also going on to talk about age-friendly cities in relation to inequalities in later life. We're really thrilled today to have Barbara Douglas with us, who isn't from Newcastle University and can provide a distinct perspective around age-friendly cities. Barbara has a voluntary sector background and has worked on a variety of different initiatives in relation to both the university's work and the city's work for over 20 years. In particular, working with the Elders Council group within the city, which was formed back in 2001 formally, and Barbara will be able to tell you a little bit more about the work of Elders Council. But really, what Barbara is focusing on really is ensuring that older people's voices are heard when it comes to the governance of projects like age-friendly cities, and to develop more innovative methods of achieving that through partnership working. So Barbara will be providing a more applied resident perspective of age-friendly cities, to contrast with the start from Tom. In the second half of the session today, Graham from the National Innovation Centre for Ageing will be talking to you about some of the work that NICA have done. Graham has been involved in a variety of different projects which relate to the development of policy, products and services around the theme of ageing. He's been one of the central people in the development of the Campus for Ageing and Vitality, which I mentioned earlier on. And in addition to Barbara and Tom, is also a member of Newcastle's Age-Friendly Group as well. Graham's also been central in the development of an organisation within NICA called Voice. Voice is a research engagement panel which seeks to bring citizens and academics together on research projects which are developing around ageing. And Voice is now expanding to work across the UK and to work with other universities as well as Newcastle as well. And then finally you'll be hearing from Rose Gilroy, Professor of Ageing Policy and Planning at Newcastle University, who has a background in housing for older people and has worked around this area for over 20 years and has research interests specifically around the impact of the ageing population and demographic change on the built environment, specifically planning and housing. Rose has worked on a variety of different projects in this regard, EPSRC funded projects within the UK, My Place, looking specifically around design issues, around service and product design and the design of environments, but also the social aspects as well and community leadership. Another project, Co-Motion, exploring mobility and well-being. But the thing that Rose is going to be speaking about later today, which is really exciting, is her work with the Future Homes Alliance, which is really trying to challenge the development industry in the UK around housing design and to think critically about housing design and how we can shape design to better reflect demographic change within the UK. So that's a brief overview of what today will cover. I hope you're really excited. We're really excited to be here. So I'll now, I think, hopefully be able to start Tom's video.
My name is Thomas Scharf. I'm Professor of Social Gerontology at Newcastle University, and I'm talking today about age-friendly communities and unequal ageing. So I'm going to cover three broad topics. I'm going to introduce the theme by looking at the background to the age-friendly movement, and by also thinking about different ways of understanding age-friendliness. I'll then go on to think more about inequalities, unequal ageing, thinking about the way in which socio-spatial inequalities affect European societies, and also some of the structural challenges that are facing age-friendly communities. I'll finish up with some ideas about how policy might reconsider age-friendliness. So the age-friendly movement really reflects a growing interest in public policy in what are called age-friendly initiatives. These are initiatives that are linked to the idea of active aging and recognise very broadly the desire of older people to live in environments that are familiar to them, to age in environments that they're attached to, and this broadly falls under the heading of ageing in place. The Age-Friendly Cities Initiative itself was developed by the World Health Organization back in 2006, and in a relatively short space of time it's evolved into a global movement. So with the global network of age-friendly cities and communities that was established by the World Health Organization in 2010, this is an initiative that networks now over 700 cities in 39 different countries with populations of over 210 million people. It's a truly global movement, but we know that most of the cities connected to the age-friendly network are cities located in the global north, in North America, in Europe, but also then reaches to Australia, to Asia, to some parts of Africa, but also to large parts of the world where there are no age-friendly cities or communities. Alongside that policy interest in age-friendliness, there's also a growing research interest in exploring different understandings of what it means to be age-friendly. So there's a growing literature that looks at different aspects of age-friendly cities and age-friendly communities. And what this research tries to do broadly is to think about what it is that makes a city or a community age-friendly, so thinking about the components of age-friendliness. In some cases, there are alternative models of what makes a city age-friendly or not. We also increasingly look at different types of environmental context in terms of age-friendliness. So thinking about different types of cities, neighbourhoods within cities, semi-urban or suburban communities as being age-friendly, right as far as remote rural communities, and what it means to be age-friendly in the context of sparse populations and rurality. Increasingly, there's also a focus in some research on how we assess whether a community has become more or less age-friendly, so the orientation here is on the evaluation of age-friendly policies, programs, and practices. This is all brought together by the World Health Organization in terms of how they would define what makes an age-friendly community. Now, the World Health Organization doesn't have a single definition of age-friendliness, it has two definitions, right? But both focus on the idea of active aging. So the World Health Organization would define an age-friendly city as being an inclusive and accessible urban environment that promotes active aging, or as a city that encourages active aging by optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security in order to enhance quality of life as people age. This is reflected in the model of age-friendliness that originates with the World Health Organization and has been picked up by many of those 700 cities and communities that are attached to the global network of age-friendly cities and communities. The model covers key areas that are important to older people in terms of their experience of the local environment. So it addresses issues like housing, transportation, social inclusion, civic participation. And different cities in their age-friendly policies and practices will focus on different aspects of these petals of the age-friendly flower. Turning to research contributions around understanding age-friendliness, we get a slightly different trajectory. There is some work that tries to think about the World Health Organization's model and in some way refine that to better reflect the importance that older people attach to the places in which they age. And this broadly addresses key themes in the field of environmental gerontology. Right? The places in which people age, the neighbourhoods in which they live, are associated with meanings, with self-identity. And it's also important in terms of how people experience later life that the quality of their lives is closely connected to the environments in which they're aging. So it's no surprise then that in terms of how researchers address age-friendliness, that they try to rework the model of the World Health Organization, but also drawing on a wider body of work in environmental gerontology. There's some work that focuses on this idea of person-environment fit and the connection between the individual's experience of their environments and their capacity to age well in that particular place. So in some work that was done in England a few years ago, researchers took the idea of age-friendliness as developed by the World Health Organization and thought that the different fields that the World Health Organization was focusing on could be simplified in some way. And also that there was a possibility to focus much more on age-friendliness as being a process of improvement. The communities that begin as being relatively unfriendly locations in which to age could become more age-friendly over time. So this was not just pitched at those communities that were already relatively affluent, could provide a good supportive infrastructure for people aging, but also those communities where aging might be more challenging. So an alternative definition of age-friendliness focuses here on the values that underpin the model of age-friendliness, so a commitment to respect and to social inclusion, but also to that strategic improvement process. So an age-friendly community is engaged in a strategic and ongoing process to facilitate active ageing by optimising its physical and social infrastructure, and also by optimising its supporting infrastructure, the services, the amenities that are associated with particular types of community. This leads to a remodelling, a slight reworking of the World Health Organization's approach to age friendliness. It sets the strategic improvement process as being a key component of age friendliness, and then groups together the different features of the World Health Organization model into these 4 components that focus on the physical environment, the social environment, the supporting infrastructure, and also that value orientation around respect and inclusion of aging adults. A slightly different understanding of age friendliness comes from the field of environmental gerontology, and more specifically this idea of person-environment fit. And this is quite an interesting idea because it suggests that an age-friendly community, an age-friendly city, strives to provide a good fit between the needs and resources of a diverse aging population and also those of the community in which they're living. In this sense, they argue that age friendliness is dynamic and reflects changes in people and environments over time. This then shifts the focus away from a static model of age friendliness to thinking about what resources exist in a community to meet the needs, to meet the demands of an aging population. So this thinks about what cities, what communities, what neighbourhoods can do in relation to their older population, rather than simply looking at the service provision or the provision of a good physical environment in terms of public benches, places for people to go to the toilet, access to shops, to public parks. In drawing some of this work together, there are some issues that remain unresolved. The World Health Organization focuses in its approach on the idea of active aging. And that itself is a contested idea in social gerontology, the field in which I work. This essentially challenges ideas around activity as being the main purpose of later life. What does it mean to be inactive in later life? Can you be active outside of the labour market? There is quite a lot strong focus in some of this work on enforced activity around volunteering, engagement for the sake of engagement. So active ageing is a contested idea. And one of the arguments that's been put forward in research is that rather than focusing on active ageing as the outcome of age friendliness, is we should also really be thinking about individual and collective well-being or quality of life as an outcome of people age. So an age-friendly community, an age-friendly city should really be thinking about engaging in a process that improves the well-being of people who live in that city or community as they age. Turning to the person-environment fit model, there's a strong argument for focusing on meeting the needs of people within changing environments, but this model has been criticised for its lack of attention to tackling the causes and the consequences of a poor person-environment fit. So thinking about issues around inequalities or the characteristics of individuals that either advantage them or disadvantage them. There are other issues that are really central to the idea of age-friendly communities as a challenge for people, for policymakers who are thinking about how to make their communities age-friendly. So in many Western countries over recent years, there's been a withdrawal of the supportive infrastructure that might facilitate age-friendliness. So the question here, the obvious question is, can a city or community be age-friendly if it's no longer able to provide the supportive infrastructure of transport, of good housing, of good public space, a space where people can engage in social interactions? Can the city still be age-friendly if that infrastructure is being hollowed out? And then coming to the idea of the improvement process. I think this is really an important feature of age-friendliness, but it's unclear what weight should be attributed to that continuous improvement process. So a community that starts off as being quite a challenging environment for older people to live in terms of high crime rates, high levels of population turnover, loss of services. They may be starting from a relatively low base in terms of age-friendliness, but could make relatively quick improvements by re-establishing transport connections, by improving the physical look of the environment. Whereas those communities that are already relatively affluent, have a good supportive infrastructure of services, they may be able to demonstrate relatively modest improvements on an already high level of age-friendliness. So the question here is how we measure, how we attribute weight to that continuous improvement process, and then in terms of evaluation, what weight should be attributed to that improvement. How do we evaluate age-friendly initiatives? And this brings me on to the second key theme of my lecture, which is what we already know about unequal aging and unequal aging in different types of environments. This is really important from a perspective of an age-friendly initiative. But we know that the environments in which people live and age are characterized by a wide range of socio-spatial inequalities, so inequalities affecting the characteristics of the population, but also inequalities in terms of the communities in which people live. And those inequalities relate to all sorts of characteristics that are important in people's lives. So there are inequalities in relation to health and well-being, to income, to wealth, to people's housing. Also unequal social relationships in terms of the risks of isolation or of loneliness. We can think of inequalities in relation to access to public or to commercial services. There are inequalities in the way in which people engage civically in their communities. And we also know that different types of communities are associated with greater or lower risks of unsafety in terms of fear of crime and vulnerability to crime. So thinking about these types of social and spatial inequalities is key to life in a city neighbourhood, but also in rural communities. So I'm going to give just one or two examples, mainly from the United Kingdom, of the nature of unequal aging, just to contextualise what we're talking about here in terms of potential challenge for age-friendly cities and communities. So we know in countries like the United Kingdom that life expectancy differences between those who are wealthy and those who are not wealthy are wide, and if anything, they're actually widening. And that is also reflected in other European societies. So there's a strong social gradient in terms of average male and female life expectancy. And that can lead to quite a big gap across particular countries in terms of people's expected years of healthy life, but also their expected years of chronological life. To take an example, in the United Kingdom, in England, in the London Borough of Richmond upon Thames, average male healthy life expectancy is around 70 years. in Manchester, healthy life expectancy for men is still around 55 years. So we're talking about a 15-year gap in England, a relatively affluent country, in healthy male life expectancy. And then we also get the big gap between the most advantaged and the most disadvantaged urban communities. And in those areas, there can be a 17-year gap in healthy life expectancy between the wealthiest areas and the least wealthy areas. In terms of average healthy life expectancy, we can also look at a range of UK cities here, and these cities on the chart are not chosen at random. So this goes from cities like Manchester, where average male life expectancy is just 74.8 years, through to Sheffield, where it's 78.7 years, to the London Borough of Camden, where there's an average male life expectancy of 80.5 years. Now these are not randomly selected cities, these are cities that belong to the UK network of age-friendly cities. So the question here is, if average male life expectancy in England is around 79 years, why are these cities doing less well than the average? Can cities be deemed to be age-friendly when they have such relatively low average life expectancies? Surely one feature of an age-friendly city should be the chance to reach a good old age in terms of the quantity of years, but also in terms of the quality of years. We can also think about unequal aging in terms of people's social relationships. So a lot of the focus in age-friendly cities and communities tends to be on aspects of the physical or built environment, things that are relatively easy to measure and to capture. But social relationships and the social environment is core to the idea of what makes a community a good place in which to age. And this is sometimes considered in relation to questions around isolation, but also around loneliness. And in some work that we did a number of years ago in very disadvantaged urban communities in England, we identified relatively high rates of loneliness in some of the poorest communities, rates that were higher than you would find in a general population of aging adults. But what's important here is that even within some of the poorest communities, there were considerable variations in the risks of loneliness for people aged 60 and over. So in some parts of Manchester, you found rates of loneliness that were twice the level of rates of loneliness in parts of the East End of London and the London Borough of Newham. So we need to think about unequal social relationships, not just at the city level, in terms of differences between places like Newcastle and Manchester and London, but also think about inequalities within cities in terms of differences between neighbourhoods in relation to unequal life expectancies, and in this case also in relation to unequal social relationships. We can also consider inequalities in terms of the degree to which aging adults have access to services and supports that can help them to live a good life in the places in which they're living and aging. And what we experience across Europe is a diminishment of access to services and supports in many communities, and that this is increasingly regarded as an inevitable feature of economic development, a process described by Harvey as the idea of accumulation by dispossession, is that as services are depleted, private companies take over those services and enrich themselves, extract new value from removing services from the public sector and locating them within the private and commercial sector. And of course that process affects some groups of the population more than others, those who are regarded as being most vulnerable or most prone to forms of social exclusion. It advantages other types of populations living in wealthier areas who are less disadvantaged, have better access to services, promoting greater inequalities across cities and communities. So if we draw some of those ideas together, we can then think new about age-friendly cities in terms of some of the structural challenges that face policymakers, planners who are trying to develop age-friendly initiatives. So the challenges can be grouped together in terms of the persistence of traditional forms of inequality based on gender, social class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, but then add in an additional layer of thinking about the spatial aspects of those inequalities. So how being a woman aging in a wealthy community differs from the experience of an aging woman living in a very disadvantaged community, or differences between majority and minority ethnic groups who are aging in different types of places. A further structural challenge goes back to the questions around austerity and lack of access to services. As societies, increasingly we appear to be losing the capacity to respond to some of the causes and consequences of inequality. Historically, this would have been done by local authorities or by central government, giving local authorities resources to provide services to local populations. Increasingly, we find that financial resources are being centralised, but local authorities, local government are losing the resources that they would need to develop local initiatives that meet the needs of local populations. And the capacity of society to respond to challenges around inequality is being reduced by the lack of appetite for taxation that would allow the redistribution of resources from those parts of society that have wealth and income to those who have less wealth and less income. We get a centralisation of decision-making processes and also the loss of services that would allow local authorities to respond to local citizens' needs. So, thinking about age-friendliness, we can look at the idea of inequality and unequal ageing and think, well, what does this imply for cities and communities that have the aspiration to become age-friendly or to become more age-friendly? And this is where I think age-friendliness has the potential to really make a contribution in terms of focusing on the reduction of inequalities. But local authorities really need to be thinking about withstanding the loss of services and supports and focus much more on how to improve the services that are provided, how to commission services so that they meet better the needs of local populations. They can also think beyond the service infrastructure, the support of services that promote age-friendliness, to think about contributions to the social environment of aging adults. So what can local decision makers do to improve the social connections that exist between different groups within the population? This might focus on improving relationships across generations in terms of intergenerational programs. It may mean providing adequate seating where people can sit down in busy spaces and interact with people who they don't know. So reducing the risks of loneliness potentially. We can also think about what local authorities can do to promote civic engagement. Can they provide support for groups of older adults to come together to better reflect the needs, the demands of older citizens? Can you skill up older generations to better represent their views in public debates? And also, you can think about more broadly aspects of the built environment. So local authorities still invest considerably in the physical environment within their communities, but they need to do this in a way that can respond better to the needs of an ageing population. So my argument would be that for cities to be age-friendly, for communities to become more age-friendly, is that addressing inequalities should become embedded in local strategies as a way of reducing inequalities and promoting age-friendliness. We also need, within our strategies, to look much more diversity within the population of older people, but also within and between communities locally. And I think this is where the ecological perspective, this idea of person and environment fit, is really helpful, because it moves us away, it moves policy away from a homogeneous idea of older people as simply a group that share the same characteristics, despite the fact that this population is highly differentiated in terms of age, gender, social class, ethnic origin, sexuality, health status, disability, and many other factors. And I also think, in terms of the age-friendly initiative, is that this doesn't exist in a vacuum. It really needs to be considered in terms of the way in which it connects to other policies and programs at local level, at regional level, at national level. And this sort of provides opportunities then to look beyond the age-friendly strategies that cities might develop, to think about how that connects with health strategies, with intergenerational programs, with programs aimed at promoting dementia-friendly communities. There are a host of these types of strategies that sometimes are disconnected within cities, but if you adopt that inequalities lens, actually belong closely together in the same family of policies. So I'm going to start finishing here by thinking about what communities can do to become more age-friendly. And some of this implies actually challenging attempts by government, whether that's national, regional, or local, to implement practices that are associated with widening inequalities. So an example in the United Kingdom are policies around universal credit at the moment, which is a benefit which is going to replace many other benefits that support people who are not engaged in the labour market. The question from an age-friendly perspective here is, what does the implementation of this type of policy do in relation to promoting or reducing age-friendliness? The simple argument here is that these types of policies don't enhance the age-friendliness of a city, they actually reduce it by reducing people's capacity to enjoy the benefits of living life, of aging within an urban or a rural setting. We also need to think much more clearly about how we can align age-friendly policies with other policies focused on reducing inequalities. So thinking about Michael Marmot's work around health inequalities and saying actually the age-friendly agenda should be part of the agenda that acknowledges the social determinants of health and of ill health and has a contribution to make to reducing unequal health impacts of aging. So this implies in developing age-friendly cities and age-friendly strategies, focusing particular effort on developing policies and practices that improve the lives of people who are most disadvantaged, that enhance the communities in which there is most disadvantage within our cities and rural region. Well, there's obviously a lot of reading to be done around age-friendly cities and communities, so I'm going to leave you with a list of references. And because this is such an important topic, it's something that I'd be more than happy to engage with you about. So I welcome people to get in touch if you've got any questions, if there's something you disagree with, if you'd like to prolong the debate and take it in another direction. Thank you for listening.
Now hopefully what we'll be able to do is have Tom join us via video link. So if you want to be thinking of some questions that you might like to ask Tom about the presentation that he's given around age-friendly cities, but also specifically around inequalities in relation to age-friendly cities.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Brilliant. Right. Okay, so you get to see me in person now that you see me in video.
Okay, it's fine. ¿Alguna pregunta?
So, well, first of all, thank you very much for the recording and the presentation. It was very interesting to see also how it's developing this initiative of active aging and age-friendly communities in UK. And I don't know if there's any question from the students, but for me it would be very interesting if you could explain a little bit about how long has been these initiatives being developed in UK, because in Spain it's something that is very recently implemented. There are many communities that have been engaged to the age-friendly global network, but only a few have already developed an implementation guide or plan. So we would like to know a little bit about the practical implementation of this agenda, for example. I think could be also something to discuss if you have this data, and also about which kind of practical initiatives regarding housing or public space, which is the main concern of this course, that could make also like a brainstorming to show what could we develop for the neighborhood we are working on.
Okay, well, those are really good questions, and I know that you have some of my colleagues already
Yes, we heard.
in Madrid, so they will also be able to say something about these questions afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of the history of the age-friendly movement, I think sometimes you imagine that before 2006, when the World Health Organization started its work, that there were no age-friendly initiatives anywhere in the world. Of course, before 2006, many local authorities, many regions were taking active steps to improve the physical, social environments of their communities to meet the challenges of demographic change. So the World Health Organization is a new initiative, but it isn't a revolution. There was a lot that still happened well before 2006 without a global movement. So to take an example that I know well from Manchester, you'll hear more about Newcastle later, but from Manchester, the city of Manchester developed its first aging initiative, I think in 2003. And this focused not so much on age friendliness as on quality of life. So it was an initiative that tried to improve the quality of life for people living in the city of Manchester, but in particular in some of the most disadvantaged neighbourhoods in Manchester. And I know one of the interests of your project is looking at particular communities in Madrid and how you could improve the age friendliness of areas that maybe are not especially age friendly or not very attractive in terms of the physical infrastructure and the housing design. So the age friendly strategy of the World Health Organization was developed from 2005 to 2006 and really has picked up very quickly into a global movement. And I think the big change in terms of numbers came in 2011 with the Dublin Declaration. So there was a first international conference on age-friendly cities and communities held in Ireland, in Dublin in 2011, and that really brought in a lot of politicians, local authorities to commit themselves to being part of the age-friendly movement. So the mayors, the chief executives from many cities travelled to Ireland to demonstrate a commitment to becoming part of this age-friendly movement. And I think, before 2011 in the UK, there were a number of cities that were active in this area, but it's really after 2011 that the numbers have grown very quickly. And the numbers continue to grow. So, in Spain, you may say, well, we're a bit slow joining this initiative. There aren't many Spanish cities involved, but this is a new initiative still. So any city that joins now is still at the beginning of the process. It's not too late to join. And I think in my talk I talked about this being a continuous improvement process. So really, if you think that you can start from a very low base, you can become age-friendly quickly by simply developing a strategic approach to questions around urban design, housing, the social environment, the service infrastructure that supports cities to become more age-friendly. I think the second question was about practical interventions in terms of housing and public space. I think those are questions for Rose and for Barbara and for Dominik, really, because they are bringing these experiences from Newcastle into the discussion later on today. I could give examples, but it's probably better that the examples come from people who are also in the room. Are there other questions or things that were not clear from the lecture? I'm always happy if people disagree with me.
¿Alguna pregunta?
I'm really worried about the features of the suburban sprawled areas. These areas are not friendly for aged people because of the zonification of uses, as well as the massive use of public vehicles. As people age, the less able are to use the private vehicles, and this is dangerous. Are there solutions to solve problems in suburban areas?
Would it be possible, because the sound isn't perfect here, that the English is quite clear, but could somebody maybe repeat the question just because I couldn't hear all of it?
Okay, yeah. Are there urban solutions or other solutions aimed to suburban areas, to suburban sprawled areas?
These are really important questions for policy and also for research, because the focus of the research is looking at a diverse older population, so different types of older people with different needs, but also then thinking about different types of environment. Right? So people don't live in cities, they live in neighborhoods in cities, and they live on the edge of cities, in commuting areas, in suburban residential areas. They live in different types of rural communities, so there's differences between communities in the mountains or on the edge of cities, at the coast. So there are all very many different types of environment, many different groups of older people. So the question that you ask about suburban areas is a really important one, and it needs to be the focus of research, because we don't have enough evidence about age friendliness in different types of community environment. So you can have suburban communities that are very well connected to a city with good public transport. These can be communities with a very good social infrastructure, that people might know their neighbours if they're living in particular types of housing. Or they could be communities that have grown very quickly, where the social relationships haven't had a chance to evolve, that people don't know one another, where people are travelling for work only into the city and don't have a good relationship with their neighbours. And they may also then have different levels of service infrastructure. So, you would have to look then at different types of suburban setting. You say sprawl, but some are sprawling settlements, some are not sprawling settlements. And the situation in Spain may be very different from the situation in Canada or the United Kingdom. So there is work in the environments of aging looking at suburbs, but experiences of aging in place in a suburban community. But that has been written without reference to age friendliness. Right? So it's a big research agenda, really, and this is because the World Health Organization model only exists now for 10 or 12 years, there's a lot of potential to collect evidence and to interpret evidence to support planning. But what would you think would make a suburb age-friendly? What do you think would be an important characteristic?
To make a suburban area age-friendly, maybe at first can be the transformation of some houses, especially the ones which are sold in social engagement centers, as well as to make programs to promote interaction among neighbors. This is very important because, as happens in traditional villages, in Spain, traditional villages, small, old villages, are aging a lot. And people there has a lot of activities to do. Nobody young remains in country villages in Spain. Of course, there are exceptions. I think the problems in suburban areas is at first the community engagement initiatives, and second, and in more long term, the retrofitting and insertion, as well as the insertion of social facilities. I think this can be the idea.
I think those are really useful points, and I think sometimes it's the parallels with what's happening in Canada that might be really interesting, because because in some villages there's a real challenge in attracting young professionals to live in a community, to be doctors, to be pharmacists, to support families, so these communities also use young people. But there are also, I think aging communities also have their own capacities to be really good places in which to age. So I tend not to regard an aging village as somehow a problem for policy. It's only a problem if people are unhappy living in those communities and don't have a good quality of life or good well-being. If there are challenges in the physical infrastructure to live well in those communities, we need to support people with good services, but I wouldn't focus always just on the sort of demographic structure of a community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other question? Okay.
Yes, I actually want to continue on what he said. I'm a student from Belgium, but I'm doing this exchange program here as well. And in Belgium it's a similar problem to have these suburban areas of where elderly people are living. But how to bring, for example, younger people to these areas as well, because probably like employment needs to be created in these areas to get more younger people there, otherwise all the people will go to bigger cities or to the city center. But how do you think this can be initiated, or how can we stimulate this? Probably it's also linked with politics, but because it's also like for social engagement, it's important to also have these younger people, I think, who can do activities together with the elderly. So because they also need some kind of support with physical activities, but also with other social activities. But how do you see this?
Yeah, I think it's important that we have communities that are good places for people, regardless of their age, to live in. I do wonder whether it's a problem, really, the society of communities are aging. I don't see that as a fundamental problem unless people really miss the company of younger people, or if younger people miss the company of older people. A country like Belgium, which is relatively small, the distances between the family generations are not that large often, so even if your parents live away in a village and you live in the city, you can still reach your family members in person with good transport, private transport, public transport, within an hour, within 90 minutes. But, at the most, probably, in a place like this, if you think the connection between Flanders and Bruges or Brussels is quite close, it's not too far to travel. And also, people will communicate and have satisfying social relationships through telephone and through other types of digital technologies. So it's not, I struggle sometimes to accept that communities that are aging are in some way problematic. Because sometimes you can also attract other older people into a community to make it a very vibrant, livable place. So if we're thinking about aging as being people from 50 up to 80, 90, 100, you get quite a range of age groups there. So in Canada, some communities are explicitly trying to attract migrants who are in their 50s and 60s, who can set up new businesses, who can bring some fresh life into a community, even though they're also older people. So you could look at a community and think this is an aging and unsustainable community, but I don't think that really exists in terms of it's an interesting question. I'm not in favour of age segregation. Really, I think we don't need age ghettos where we just institutionalise older people and say this is only for older people. But if people are living in normal housing and going about their normal lives, then those communities can also be age-friendly. If there's a good social infrastructure and a good physical and service infrastructure. But I wouldn't plan just to have communities designed for older people. But sometimes that occurs naturally and it's not, I don't regard that as a real problem. Politicians regard it as a problem.